Welcome to Bell Brothers Brewing.
Engineers talking about beers.
And today, we're gonna go look for a box.
Okay, so the difference with this is it's very dry. It's supposed to be a champagne style pale ale. So on the box it says it's a little brother. It's very dry, packed with hops, notes of grapefruit and lemon, and it's going to be higher carbonation, so it's more bubbly like a champagne. Something we've never done before. I've never even attempted a Brut, IPA, Brut, anything. I've heard of them, but was never particularly interested, but today we're gonna give it a try because we do this for you. Let's go.
Although apparently it's harder to find an American Pale Ale than you would expect.
Well, I'm gonna guess that American Pale Ale kits go fast because, I mean, who doesn't want to do an American Pale Ale as their first beer? Like, what do you like? I like pale ales. Let's make a pale ale. Just seems like the easy starting point for most people.
We've got the Brut Dry Pale Ale by Brewer's Best, which, I don't know, could be interesting.
Yes, it's a different take. It's something we've never attempted before, period. Because an overly dry pale ale can go astringent real easy, and so it's a risk to attempt this. But
what is a Brut?
So Brut is referring to Brut champagne, and when you're talking about Brut beers, or Brut dry pale ales in this case, you're talking about a dry champagne-like consistency to your beer. You're trying to mimic that extra bubbly, dry. Like we said a few times now, I think we're going to keep saying dry. Mimic that bubbly, dry texture of a champagne in a beer. It's a new common thing that people are doing with pale ales and IPAs. That's why it says Brut dry here, because people are not super used to the Brut name. So they have to include dry because it's new-ish. I mean, I want to say I've only started seeing it about a year, maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's been relatively new to the market.
Yeah, which in the world of beer is new. When you're considering an ancient tradition, a 2-year-old style is very new.
Thousands of years of beer.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of a counterpoint to the juicy New England IPAs that were also coming out recently. Just a year or two before Brut became a thing.
Right.
So there's a lot of cultural zeitgeist in how beer comes around.
Who are our lucky inspectors today?
We have Inspector number 11. Very good, Inspector number 11. We'll be checking your work. All right, so a Brut Dry Pale Ale is the Brut IPA's little brother. The Brut Dry Pale Ale is very dry and packed with hops. Like I said, we're going to say dry a lot today. Notably of grapefruit and lemon citrus ring through as the bubbly effervescence creates a refreshing finish. All right, so let's do our ingredients. So over here we have a little ingredients box, so let's check everything is in there. We have fermentables, light LME.
Bam.
Bam.
So, yep, liquid malt extract.
We have 2 pounds of extra light dry malt extract. The next thing is corn sugar.
Oh, yeah. And adjuncts pure, right?
Pure sugar, all fermentable, will leave nothing behind. Bye-bye. Next up we have specialty grains, 6 ounces of Munich Light.
Oh man. Yeah, so if you saw our last brew box, this is a tiny bag of Maltese.
Hops, we have 1 ounce of Magnum.
Magnum. There it is. We've got Magnum hops. That's alpha acid of 11.8%. But the alpha acid 11.8, that's a great bittering hop, right? So high alpha acid, it's going to be perfect for that.
That's where we're going. That's our bittering hop right there.
Oh, we do have the corn sugar.
Yeah, corn sugar too. We can make cores here.
We can make cores. If we just put the corn sugar in and sprinkled at least the concept of hops over the top of it,
boom,
and then filled it with piss, we would have cores.
Next up, we have 2 packs of 1 ounces of Chinook hops.
Chinook. Actually, Chinook is at 13.1% alpha.
All right. Should be 2 packs of those.
Two.
2 packs. All right, and finally we have 1.5 ounces of lemon drop.
Ooh, lemon drop, yes. Alpha acid, 5.2%.
And this one will be interesting because that's one of our whirl hops.
Ooh, another whirl, huh?
Yeah, so
Nice.
we've got 2 whirl hops. I think we're going to do 1 ounce of Chinook and the packet of lemon drop for our whirl here.
Nice.
Finally, we have yeast, 1 sachet, which it's not in the box because I had to make a starter.
That's right.
Starters are very good. And then we have 1 satchel of glucoamylase.
All right, Cody, so I gotta know, what the heck? I've never seen a packet of glucoamylase. Glucoamylase. There you go. And so, why the heck do I have this in my brew box?
So the glucoamylase is an enzyme that is going to help break down more starches even more rapidly to make sure almost all of your sugars are fermentable to help get that dry, very sparkly feel to it, And then you've got your priming sugar,
Bam. Prime sugar.
bottle caps,
Bottle caps.
and a grain bag. That's not a grain bag.
Nope, not a green bag.
The inspectors have failed us. There's no grain bag.
There's no grain bag in the box?
Damn you, inspectors numbers 11 and 23.
Inspection number 23, you done hosed us, man. What happens when you don't get your brew sock in your brew box?
Use an old gym sock?
Ooh, as long as it's not from Cody, anyways.
Extra funk. Recommended procedures. Step 1, read. Read all of the recommended procedures before you begin.
And then we're gonna double check to make sure that the thermometer is in the temperature chamber.
Is an important step. All right, next up, sanitize. Thoroughly clean and sanitize all brewing equipment and utensils that will come in contact with any ingredients, wort or beer, with a certified sanitizer, Star San or IOStar, for example.
We use Star Sans. We're big fans of the liquid aspect to that one, and it's quick and easy to dump in.
Yep.
Very small amounts is necessary. Sanitize it, which is different than cleaning, right? So you want to make sure that it doesn't have any kind of junk all over it, right? You should have nice, shiny, clean equipment. But then sanitizing, even when it's shiny, you have to get rid of, make sure there's no bacteria. All right, time for water chemistry, which is also not in the instructions.
Using water chemistry tends to result in a better product. Not necessary, but we prefer it because we like good beer. It's good beer. It's good beer.
So what we're doing here is basically the same water chemistry that you see at the B3 brew, the experimental.
Calcium chloride and a little bit of Epsom salt. More Epsom salt than calcium chloride because this is a hop-forward beer.
Right.
And then lactic acid because this is a pale beer and you need a little lactic acid to get your proper pH balance. Next up we have steep grains. Pour 2.5 gallons of clean water into your brew pot and begin to heat. Pour crushed grains into the grain bag that we don't have. Tie a loose knot at the top of the bag that we don't have. When the water is within the appropriate steeping temperature, 150 to 165 degrees Fahrenheit, place the grain bag, that we don't have, into the brew pot. Steep grains for approximately 20 minutes. Remove grain bag, that we don't have, without squeezing and allow liquid to drain back into pot. Your water is now wort. Kind of. Wort-ish.
So why is it not considered wort yet?
We haven't hopped it yet, right?
You haven't hopped it, and in this case, just steeping 6 ounces, you're going to have slightly grainy water. It's not really wort because you steeped 6 ounces of grains in it for 20 minutes. It's barely extracted anything.
The specialty malts are just they're exactly that. They're just kind of the icing on the cake, the kind of extra high notes or low notes that are going to build up that beer.
Start boil. Bring wort to a gentle rolling boil.
B2B RTS.
That's right. Bring to boil, reduce to simmer.
Add 2 1-pound pouches of extra light DME.
And I'm going to stop them there on one real quick note. And I know we've mentioned this in the last box. If this is the first one you're watching of our system, because it's a powdered, right, DME, and you're going to put it into rolling boil water, I think you're going to get a lot of energy.
Yeah. Do this slowly.
Yeah.
Don't just dump the whole bag in one shot.
Be really careful when you're putting that in there, because it's a really easy way for you to...
They're putting in heterogeneous nucleation sites for the water bubbles.
Boom! Engineering.
In other words, you're at risk of building a geyser.
Yes.
Yeah, your head's gonna get real big.
What's that supposed to mean? All right. Next, add 1 pound of corn sugar, and the 3.3 pound can of light liquid malt extract. So put all your fermentables in the pot. Continuously stir the extract into the wort as it returns to a gentle rolling boil.
Once you've added all your fermentables into your pot, we are actually going to add our priming sugar into that as more fermentables, just to kind of give it that little extra kick. Reason we don't need the priming sugar in our case is because we're not bottling, and if you're not bottling, you're not going to have to put the priming sugar in the bottling bucket to get the yeast to carbonate the bottles. We put it into a keg, use CO2 canisters, and carbonate inside the keg. So that saves us time, and we're able to add the priming sugar to the brew.
For the whole like 0.001.
Yeah, it ain't much, but I have nothing else to do with it.
Yeah.
So.
Step 5, follow schedule. As directed on the brew day schedule to the right, slowly sprinkle the hops into the boiling wort. Emphasis on the slow.
Otherwise, big geysers, lots of explosions, more nucleation sites.
Be careful not to let the wort boil over the pot, like they said.
Yeah, don't do that.
Using the provided brew day schedule, note the time the hops were added to help keep your brew on schedule. Continue. Use timer.
Use your timer, run it, set the alarms, don't just ballpark it.
Continue the gentle rolling boil until boil is complete. Brew day schedule, add 1 ounce pack of Magnum hops.
Bam!
Boil for 45 minutes. Add 1 ounce pack Chinook hops.
Chinook 1,
Wow.
we have Chinook 2.
Chinook 2 does not go in yet. Follow instructions. Chinook 2 does not go in now. Bet. Boil for 15 minutes. Terminate boil with extreme prejudice.
And then,
Next, continue to step 6. Step 6, Whirlpool Hop Addition.
now the other bag, yay!
Cool the wort down to 180 degrees. Turn it off, that happens almost instantly. Add last pack of Chinook hops and 1.5 ounce pack of lemon drop hops.
Lemon drop.
Allow hops to steep at 180 for 20 minutes, gently stirring occasionally. After 20 minutes, continue on to step 7. Step number 7, cool wort and transfer. Finish cooling the wort down to approximately 70 degrees Fahrenheit by placing brew pot in a sink filled with ice water.
Well, you could also, like the easy first kit that you normally would get is a in pot or an immersion chiller. So you're going to take basically a garden hose or sink water, and it feeds it through the internal copper coil, or the only copper coil, right, to the inside, and the outside then goes into your brew pot, and then you kind of whirl around in your brew pot a little bit and get your wort cooled. I will warn you though that doing that, even in like a cold bath, is going to be in the range of like 45 minutes to cool it.
It takes
or
a while.
more.
In this case, it wouldn't be too long because you only have 2.5 gallons of liquid, so it'll cool a little quicker. Well, actually, by the time you're done with your boil, it'll have probably 2 gallons, maybe 1 3/4, depending on how aggressive your boil is.
And your steep.
And your steep is going to cool it off too. So this one could cool quickly because there's just not a lot of liquid, and you already steeped it, which lets more temperature off as well. But it's still nice to have fancy tools because everything gets easier with fancy tools.
Right? Hopefully our brew days real fast.
Pour or siphon the wort into a sanitized fermenter. Avoid transferring the heavy sediment, trub, from the brew pot to the fermenter. Kind of. Trub's not a big deal. Avoid it a little bit, but don't worry about it. A little bit of trub won't hurt you.
Yeah, I wouldn't dump like everything. You know, I wouldn't just like take your brew pot, just like dump
Pour
it
it
straight
over.
into your fermenter. But as long as you bring it over and pay attention to how much liquid you can get out, because remember, what you're pulling out is what's going to make your beer in the end, right? The wort that you now have is the yummies, the ABV, the flavors, and the more that you leave behind, the less beer and less flavor you have. Even if in the next step you would fill it back up to 5 gallons, you still have less technically than you would have previously. So you'd be kind of studious between your choices.
Step number 8, add water. Add enough clean water at approximately 64 to 72 degrees to the fermenter to bring your wort to approximately 5 gallons. Thoroughly stir the water into the wort using a sanitized hydrometer. Take an original gravity reading. Once you are satisfied your wort is at the proper volume and within OG range, record the OG in the percent ABV calculator to the right. Or put it in a spreadsheet or anywhere else you prefer to record your information.
Right.
But record it. It's important.
Recording the original gravity gives you the starting line for figuring out your ABV in the final steps, unless you freeze your beer multiple times. and then your OG and FG measurements, your final gravity measurements, you're completely out the door.
And it made no sense.
You have no idea what your original or final gravities are. Why do I know about that guy?
I don't know why you know about that. No clue. I don't even know why that was relevant to what was going on.
There's no relevance whatsoever.
Step number 9, pitch the yeast. You get it? Just, yeah. And that's how you make beer. You just throw yeast in a random direction and boom, your wort turns into beer.
Well, if you
It's like
watched
magic.
the last yeast making video that I put online, Cody missed about 45% of the yeast into the container on the first time around anyways.
Powdered yeast is a pain in the ass. Use liquid.
You should have seen it, right? On the camera, he's like, ha-ha! Completely whipped the first time.
Like I said, powdered yeast is a pain in the butt. Use liquid. It's much preferable. Yes, you have to keep it cool, but it is way easier to use, and I prefer it over powdered any day. Check the dates on all of your yeast.
Yeah, always.
Because old dry yeast is still not going to work either.
Yeah, dead yeast is dead yeast no matter what you do. Technically, it's old, you know.
It's
doesn't-
sad, tired yeast.
Yeah, it just doesn't do the job quite the way it should be doing the job.
Sprinkle the contents of the yeast sachet. Do not rehydrate. We do what we want.
I do what I want.
Over the top of the entire wort surface and stir well with sanitized spoon or paddle. Sanitized is important there. Firmly secure the lid onto the fermenter. After getting your yeast into your wort, we're going to go ahead and oxygenate. Once again, screw the instructions, we do what we want. Oxygenating helps improve the quality of your beer. It makes your yeast more active in the beginning, really helps get through that multiplication phase where they're multiplying and really building up. The faster you get through that, the lower the chance that your beer is going to get infected. Also, it reduces stress on the yeast, and stressed yeast make weird flavors. So, in this case, yeast flavor could completely throw the balance of this out. I'm pretty sure there is a low flavor. I don't know what a Safe Ale 05 is, but I would guess it's pretty similar to a WLP 001 California ale yeast, so it's going to be clean and low flavor. So, help your yeast stay clean. Don't stress them out. So, fill your airlock halfway with water and gently twist the airlock into the fermenter's grommeted lid. Move the fermenter to a dark, warm, temperature-stable area between 64 and 72 degrees.
Temperature stable being important, you know, like not freezing. That's important. You don't want to do that.
It's the middle of summer. How would anything get frozen? I don't know what you're talking about.
It's also important to talk. Oh, you said something about the airlock, about half full. You can very easily fill the whole thing up with water, but the reason why you go halfway or a little less is you're just trying to cover up so that you have a sealed environment and a one-way valve. So you're trying to let the CO2 out of your fermentation, but you don't want stuff getting back in. And if you fill up your airlock all the way, nothing gets back out. And that's a really great way for you to lose either the whole, what was it called?
The whole airlock will shoot out of the fermenter.
You make little missiles, which is cool too. I mean, it's engineering, right? So that's
It's a fun way to make a missile.
right?
But
Some rocketry.
there's also a chance the whole lid will blow off your fermenter and you will end up with beer everywhere. And if that happens to you often, you may be overfilling your fermenter. You need enough headspace to keep the krausen out of your airlock. Step 10. Monitor and record. We're now into the fermentation stage. The wort will begin to ferment within 24 to 48 hours. You may notice CO2 releasing, bubbling, out of the airlock. Make sure it's bubbling. If you do not see bubbling within 24 to 48 hours, something has gone wrong. Either your airlock is overfilled and you have a sealed pressure vessel now, or boom, you're not getting fermentation, or you have a leak. Because that is also possible. If you have a leak in your fermentation chamber, you may not see any bubbling because it's escaping out of a different hole.
Eventually, if you're not careful, krausen will start to sneak out, and you get this really cool, like muffin top, you know, krausen sneaky gooey thing going on.
And then it ruins your floor.
And then it gets onto your floor or whatever, which is why you also follow Cody's previous recommendation of putting it in a shower. One, because it tends to be a little cooler because of the ceramic and whatnot around there. But if you put it in there, it's much easier to clean if it gets onto your floor.
If no bubbling is evident by day 2 of fermentation, take a gravity reading with a sanitized hydrometer. That'll let you know if fermentation is happening and you just aren't seeing it. Because if there's less sugars, something is eating it.
Right?
It might not
Bacteria.
be your yeast. Might not be your yeast, but something's eating it. If gravity is dropped below your OG reading, then fermentation is taking place.
You could get a reading where the OG is technically lower, or the current gravity is less than the original gravity, But that could mean the bacteria or wild yeast are getting in there and doing their business, not the yeast that you want to be doing their business. And that's going to cause problems.
Allow the beer to ferment for 4 to 6 days. Yay!
Although if you're pitching just the dry yeast, it may take closer to like 10 days. Just pay attention to the vigorousness of your fermentation, and when it finally stops, you're not seeing krausen either coming out of your airlock or the airlock is now stopped bubbling, then you're probably in a good state. And so don't just go 6 days, bam, I'm done, and you open it up right and it's still like cranking along in there. That's probably not good. You want to wait that out.
So we're not going to go into bottling. Curveball here, glucoamylase time.
Boom!
I was about to say, you didn't touch the glucoamylase.
Glucoamylase. See, I can say it after they said it 4 or 5 times.
Enzyme addition. Step 11. Add glucoamylase enzyme. Add the glucoamylase enzyme. I really hope they don't keep saying that. It's kind of hard to read. Immediately after you've transferred to your secondary fermenter. If you don't have a secondary fermenter, then add the enzyme to your primary fermenter.
Now, does that to say then, because this is going to get the yeast theoretically to go back
Active
after
again.
and go after it again, right? So we're going to see active fermentation. We're actually going to see another round.
That's the idea. Is you should see another round of active fermentation in your secondary.
I'm thinking our secondary is not going to be a glass carboy this time around. We should move secondary to another bucket.
Yeah.
Because one, it's going to be a lot easier to clean. So when you get all those yeasties cranking along, doing their thing in the fermentation, I don't want them in all of that.
You know how you have the yeast fermentation curve. It goes up, and you start getting your fermentation. Your OG starts coming down, and then you start to slow as you get more of the sugars taken out. As it starts to hit that slowing, I think that's the time to put in the glucoamylase, because then you're going to spike it back up again, get that activity, and it'll drop back out.
Right?
Because
Science!
I'm a brewer and I know what I'm doing. Yeah, we would do this as a normal primary with one added step, and then we're going to go to our glass carboy secondary to let it condition a little bit. However, back to the instructions if you don't know how to finagle. Fermentation will start again as the glucoamylase enzyme works to create more fermentable sugars for the yeast to consume. This is helping dry out your beer, get that champagne-like consistency. Allow the beer to ferment an additional 4 days. After day 4, take a hydrometer reading to ensure your gravity is within the 0.999 to 1 final gravity range. So you're looking for something that is approximately as dense as water. So this is going to be a thin boy.
This is gonna be really light. Holy moly! I'm excited, right? This gets me excited. This is so cool. Like we got the cool science going on, cool engineering going on, and it's beer that we had definitely never played with.
Completely new ground here.
This is like a new tool. We should play with this more. I think we're gonna experiment with this. I think we should do Brut stouts.
No, I refuse. There will not be Brut stouts.
Come on, man. No. Brut barley wines.
Oh no!
That's a horrible idea.
No, we could get it up to like 20% ABV.
Great, and it'll taste like crap and nobody will want to drink it.
Well, you just drink it fast, and then eventually it all tastes like water anyway. So
As long as we keep it on the pale, it could be interesting to do like an extra dry, like blonde, or an extra dry Munich Helles.
So, if you guys have any interest in what kind of Bruts, and if you agree with the producer or my brother here, let us know down in the comments. Hit this poll. Let us know what you want to see bruted. And if you vote high enough and you get your friends to vote, they're going to do it anyways. So, vote for the really cool stuff.
Bad idea. Don't do it.
Right, exactly. Don't you want to see that content?
If it is not in the previously mentioned range, continue fermentation until it reaches this range. That step's kind of weird because if it stops and
Right.
you're not seeing much, then you're shit out of luck. You can't make it ferment more. Record your final gravity reading in the ABV calculator to the right. I'm excited. I want to see how this goes.
And we talk a good game, and you're going to see it here in the next 10 to 15 minutes or so. You can know whether or not the Bell Brothers successfully pulled that off.
Or did the fuck up fairy visit again? Whack! Bottling day.
Yay! Bottling day.
Step 12. Read. Read all of the recommended procedures before you begin.
Hey, inspector number 23, where's my sock?
Step number 13. Sanitize. Thoroughly clean and sanitize all brewing equipment, utensils, and bottles that will come into contact with any ingredients, wort, or beer with a certified sanitizer. For example, Star San or IO Star. Step 14. Prepare priming sugar. In a small saucepan, dissolve 4.5 ounces of priming sugar into 2 cups of boiling water for 5 minutes. Pour this mixture into a clean bottling bucket. Carefully siphon beer from the fermenter into the bottling bucket. Avoid transferring any sediment. Stir gently for about 1 minute.
So the whole point in that is you're adding the extra sugar from the priming sugar, and then you want to stir but not oxygenate, right?
Yeah.
So you're trying
Stir
to keep
gently.
gently. So you're trying to get all that sugar throughout the mixture consistently, so that each one of your bottles will have the same amount of extra sugar, and that yeast can then do what they need to do. If you don't, and you just pour it in one location and you don't stir that up, then you're going to have a couple of bottles that have a whole bunch of sugar and a whole bunch of bottles that don't have any sugar. The ones that don't have any sugar won't carbonate, so you'll have flat beer. That sucks. And the ones that have a whole buttload of sugar will explode. And so you'll have glass of shrapnel all over, or shrapnel. There we go. Shrapnel. Will Shatnel.
When you blow up Shatner, you get shrapnel.
Shrapnel. You'll get shrapnel, bottle bombs, and a mess to clean up, because that's fun.
And no beer.
So you get flat beer and no beer, which is just a sad day again. So you just
more
waste your
cleaning
time.
to do.
Yeah, and more cleaning. Well, you better love that though. So if you're brewing,
Step 15. Bottle. Use your siphon setup and bottling wand to fill the bottles to within approximately 1 inch of the top of the bottle. Use a bottle capper to apply sanitized crown caps. It's all very important there. Don't overfill. You can get bottle bombs that way. And sanitize your caps, because you need clean caps.
So about where, like on the bottle behind, or the bottles behind you, you notice they've got 3 different fill levels.
Yeah.
Which one's correct?
That one.
That one's too much. These two are too much. This one's about right.
That one's about right to slightly low. That one's a little too high, because that's not really an inch in scale.
Yeah. So you need enough space in there. So usually when you're using the bottling wand, if you push it all the way down to the bottom and you fill the beer all the way up to the top of the bottle and remove the bottling wand, the amount of volume that you've just removed is roughly the appropriate amount of volume.
Bottle condition. Step 16. Move the bottles to a dark, warm, temperature-stable area between 64 and 72 degrees. Basements are good for this. It's like people fermenting in caves or something had an idea there.
Right?
Over the next 2 weeks, bottles will naturally carbonate. Carbonation times vary depending on the temperature and beer style, so be patient if it takes a week or so longer. Patience is key. Don't rush your beer. That's how you get bad beer. Chill and enjoy. And we're done.
And we're back from outer space.
So inspectors 11 and 23
Yes.
failed you guys.
So the inspectors failed us, but luckily we had an old kit running around in our supply closet, and we found a sack. And it's a little smaller than the last one, but since the grains are very small, I mean,
Right. A baggie of grains.
tiny baggie of grains, I think we'll be okay. So yeah, so that's why you keep around stuff. You know,
Keep spare supplies, because you might need them. Because apparently, inspectors 11 and 23 are going to mess it up.
We're gonna have to check our boxes moving forward. Shame.
It's done.
Three weeks. 3 weeks of work in the Bell Brothers magically have the Brut.
It looks all right. You know, it's a little foggy. That could be chill haze.
As it's warming up, kind of hanging out in the hands here, I'm seeing kind of some more of the clarities coming through. Although it's a Brut and it's supposed to be kind of champagne-esque, right? So I'm thinking that it's supposed to be kind of really cold, which might lend itself to chill haze anyways. I mean, you don't really like drink Budweiser out of like a champagne glass. You just pound it through the can and move on, right?
But you do drink your Michelob out of champagne glass.
Because it's champagne and beers.
It's,
It is aromatic in that sense, right? You're really picking up really bright.
sweet, maybe a hint of grapefruit. It's not aggressively grapefruity. I'm not really smelling much pininess at all. There is a hint of sweet and some citrusy.
I'm not particularly fond of the aromatics. It's not leaning one way or another in the sense that I would prefer to smell
It doesn't
something
have
clean.
a big bouquet of smells. It's
Yeah.
just sort of meh. It's a Brut Pale Ale, so it's probably not got a lot. You know, if we could do an extra Brut Pale Ale and dry hop it to really get a little extra aroma out of it.
Curtis, why are you chewing
You got
your
something
beer?
to say?
So that tells you kind of, well, I mean, like, the confusion, I think, itself kind of points to the fact that it doesn't, there's not one single flavor.
There's nothing super
or
special
compound.
about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very neutral kind of, well, commercial brand, box beer, something that you would pick up and you're like, yeah, in general, this is a pale ale, you know,
Yeah.
and it kind of melds.
The only noticeable trait about it is that it is very light and spritzy on the tongue. So you can adjust the hops. I think we are a little low on carbonation here. Just by sipping it, it could use to be a bit more carbonated. And I think that would help enhance that champagne-like texture we're looking for.
Okay. Could lighten it up a little bit.
Yeah, and that might help bring that out. I think hop-wise, to change it, if you want a more fruity sort of flavor, we could go back to the Vic Secret. This does a great fruity, bright flavor.
I think almost because you've got the enzymes that were going to take it and really lighten up that body anyways. I would change the yeast to impart something. So maybe start with a cider or a wine yeast and
That could
get
be
it
interesting.
dry. You know, and kind of impart some of those winey flavors. So that way you got this like beer base.
Yeah.
And then you're tossing the
Toss
hint
in
of
the
wine.
hint of a different flavor using the yeast. That could be an interesting way to do it. It's not giving me anything that's super like, this is here, I'm here, and here's what I'm doing. It's just, I'm a little dry. Done.
It's a middle of the road pale ale that's a little drier than normal, and it just doesn't hit on any one note. It doesn't sing. It doesn't. There's nothing where I'm going, holy moly, this is great. I want to drink more of this. If I was served this in a restaurant, it would be like, sure, with dinner, it's a decent drinking pale ale.
It would go down well with a burger and fries without any
It doesn't
issue.
get in the way.
Yeah.
You know
so
what?
a dry hop would really pump up those aromatics,
That would
and
be
then
cool.
you got the air, like it's just
Yeah.
like throwing the
Oh, yeah.
hop aroma at you.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think a dry hop would be good, and the change in the yeast, and you could really pump this beer up to like an 11. Like it could be something
It would be
really
maximizing
special.
the special traits of what
Yeah.
you're looking for. It would be champagne-like, but it would have the huge nose of hops and would have a slightly different flavor to it because of the
Definitely.
cider yeast.
Let's get to the beer. Score on this one, I'm gonna give this one like a solid 3. I mean,
3? You really just don't like
I
it at
just
all?
don't like. It's so neutral, and it doesn't sing on any notes. I just don't think it wins. From my personal drinkability, I don't like it.
See, I think it gets 5. Because I don't... Anything below 5 means I actively dislike this.
Right?
5 means I am entirely ambivalent. I don't care. And I
true
think
neutral?
That's agreeable. Yeah, it's truly neutral. It's
Yeah.
okay. If you handed me this, I would be like, yeah, I can drink this.
I could be
and I would
convinced.
sit there and sip it, and I wouldn't enjoy it greatly, but I would not be upset with it. This has been Bell Brothers Brewing, engineers talking about beers.
Cheers.